everyone, and welcome to the LinkedIn Collective Studio live from Cannes. I'm Allison Hughley, Senior Director of Customer Insights at LinkedIn, and I'm joined today by a panel of industry experts to discuss a topic that has been a major theme coming out of Cannes this year, the creator economy. There is massive opportunity here, and B2B brands are sitting up and taking notice. It is estimated that the creator economy will be worth $500 billion by 2027. Historically, B2B brands and platforms have been skeptical about influencer marketing, and some have even consciously distanced themselves from it. But times have changed, and the era of B2B influencer marketing is here. I'm joined today by Neil Weller, co-founder of Whaler, Jasmine Ehrenberg, principal analyst at eMarketer, and Raul Titus, global head of Ogilvy, and recent winner of the Grand Prix Creative B2B Lions. We're here to talk more about tapping into the true potential of the B2B creator economy. Thanks for joining us. So I'll turn to you first, Neil. The concept of B2B marketing has been around for a while, influencer marketing, but actually within the B2B space, it's really begun to catch fire and gain momentum. Can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of influencer marketing in the B2B space?
Absolutely. I mean, I always find the interesting thing with this is that actually storytelling's been around for a long time, and I think about B2B marketing, and actually maybe you could start off with religion, starting off as one of the first B2B marketing spaces, and then you go to people like Sir Richard Branson and you say with the Virgin brand, or you think of Elon Musk and what they built as a brand. And storytelling as B2B marketing's been around for a very long time. It's just technology and platforms has actually democratized it to where far more people can enter the B2B landscape as well. The stat I personally then love about the creator economy, so we started Whaler 8 years ago. At that time, less than 10% of the creators we worked with were full-time creators. So the majority were people working jobs, a side hustle, or actually just a passion point of building communities online and telling stories. Last year, I think we worked with 13,000 creators. 95% were full-time creators. 70% had a manager or agent, and 20% had at least one full-time employee. So also you've got this landscape where they are business owners, they are publishers, they are entrepreneurs. And then I'll add to that, look at music, look at sport, even look at other people that are starting businesses as entrepreneurs now. All these people are building online communities and telling stories. And so I think we're in the era where more and more of the population are storytellers, and everybody has to earn money, so everybody has a job in a working life. So that landscape and opportunity in B2B marketing in a world where many more people are storytellers and many more people are consuming the content created by these different storytellers, I think that's where the explosion of opportunity in B2B marketing has come from. But actually it's not that new concept, so that's the thing. It's a concept as old as time, but the tools that are available today and the amount of people participating in it has exploded. And so I just think it's a really exciting time to then engage in B2B marketing.
Thank you so much, Neil, for that perspective. Raul, I'm going to give you the next question.
Sure.
Everything that Neil said sounds absolutely right, but what we've observed is that B2B has been slower than B2C to kind of adopt influencer marketing as sort of a core aspect of sort of their marketing mix. So really curious, what's behind that, the mindset shift that we're seeing? Why was it slower to catch on?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, at the end of the day, influencer marketing works because people trust people more than they trust brands. And that is the core, reason why influence as a vertical exists today. Yes, B2B brands have been slower, but to be honest, the growth and the pace of growth has been much faster than consumer, than B2C as well. So we set up a specialist B2B influencer function 2 years ago. When we had brands starting to take this place very seriously, and that's grown very quickly. The one thing I'd probably point out is that we've seen the B2B space really learn quicker than the B2C space, because they're learning from all the mistakes the B2C space, worked on in the last 10 years or so. So there's been a big exponential growth in how fast it's growing, obviously, but it's also been a very, it's been great for these brands because, they're really winning in the space.
That's really interesting. Actually, we recently did a meta-analysis where we were looking at sort of the impact of influencers within the B2B space, looking at tech buyers. And one of the things we found is that it was 3 times more believable if it came from an individual versus coming from a company post, which was really interesting.
Absolutely.
Shifting to the topic of research, would love to turn the next question to you, Jasmine, which is eMarketer recently released kind of a deep dive looking at this topic. So we'd love to understand what were some of the most significant findings from your research.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing I want to talk about, though, is this shift or the slower shift in B2B than in B2C towards influencer marketing, because that makes sense considering how much slower the shift to digital overall has been within B2B when you compare it to B2C. So at eMarketer, we expect about 45% of total B2B ad spending to go to digital. If you look at B2C or the overall market, that figure is closer to 80%. But in terms of the research we conducted specifically, I think one of the biggest findings was that the B2B buyer is getting younger, getting more sophisticated. It's the same person who's scrolling through TikTok at night who's involved in these purchasing decisions. And a little bit to push back on your point, which, about storytelling. Yes, there are great examples of B2B brands that have done good storytelling, that have used quote unquote influencer marketing before influencer marketing was a term. But the reality is that most B2B brands aren't very good at it, or historically haven't really been very good at it. And a lot of the content has been very stale or dry or boring. And now as we're seeing the B2B buyer get younger, these brands also know that they need to catch up, speak to the customer the way they want to be spoken to. And I think that's a big reason for the rise of influencer marketing within B2B.
No, look, totally fair. I think that when you think of like a Branson or an Elon Musk, no one would call them boring in what they did. No. And I think it's that storing capability. The other thing I was thinking as we were just talking is that I suspect the B2B buying cycle is a longer buying cycle, a more thoughtful buying cycle. Mm-hmm. And the creator economy space started off more as an entertainment space. What you've seen now is a shift in the expansion of the space where there is still a thriving category and an important category of entertainment that exists in the creator economy, but there's this very thoughtful category of STEM educators, or there's Tyler, who's like the Hollywood attorney that was a Hollywood attorney for 20 years, and she's now taking that experience online, posts on LinkedIn all the time to creators about what are the lessons that they can learn. So I think also you've seen this shift in the expansion of the set of creators and what's being published into different industries and thought topics and genuine education with an entertainment twist on it, but genuine education driven. And I think that is also what's opening up more opportunity in this B2B space as well.
And just to add to that, I think you really touched on it really well. We talk about it as a spectrum of influence, and in the B2B space, the number of followers has never mattered. Some of the best influencers we work with in the space actually have 20 followers, but that's okay because you can buy the reach. What you can't buy is the voice and the trust and the authenticity. So for us, anybody that has the right voice is an influencer. And some of those best influencers are your employees. So really start leaning into your employees because they are the best people out there.
Yeah, what's really interesting about that is one of the things we found is that when you look in aggregate on average, the number of employees, you mentioned reach, that audience is about 12x what they can reach than what you can reach just with the company alone. So there's benefit there as well. I'm going to give you the next question as well, because one of the things that Jasmine mentioned is that historically the content hasn't been great. And we know that oftentimes what works in B2C doesn't always translate into B2B. So maybe, again, also as a Grand Prix winner, if you can share some best practices and principles on really what makes for effective B2B.
Yeah, I think don't think too much about it. At the end of the day, B2B influencers are still storytellers. And I think Neil put that really well. Really lean into the story. That story is everything. Give them a framework in which to operate in, but lean in, let them tell their stories and make sure it works for both sides. But that story is really powerful. And the more you embrace that, the more success you see. So, which I think is really simple, but that is genuinely the way it works at the end of the day.
Amazing. Neil, I would love your perspective because it's actually quite unique coming from as an entrepreneur. So when you think about B2B influencer marketing, can you shed a little light on what it looks like from your vantage point?
So here's the plug where I want the check later. But seriously, this is a non-sponsored endorsement. It's out of genuine love and appreciation for the opportunity and platform that LinkedIn's provided. There is no way in my mind that Whaler would have reached the scale at the speed it has without LinkedIn as a platform for us as a company to communicate with the wider industry. And again, I don't think it's anything new. It's the equivalent of being at a conference every day. with an audience, getting to speak to. And I'm able to publish on LinkedIn, and then the amount of people that will come up to me in real life events and say, oh, I saw that there, and you've got so much momentum going on because of these things. Or as Raoul said, like we've got our employees posting and telling stories, which is also important because then they understand the fabric of the landscape. But I think, again, everyone's kind of having to start building community and tell a story. And I think maybe before with brands, it was a case where we're not going to tell the company story, we're going to tell the story of the products. Now consumers want to know the stories of the companies and the people and the personalities. And I always love the example that when Daniel Ek posted on LinkedIn, it outperformed every post that Spotify had ever posted on LinkedIn, because they wanted to hear from a person, seeing it there in the video of him speaking to the audience. And so it's just also where consumerism and behavior has shifted. But as an entrepreneur, the ability to tell that story, as I said, literally have a conference every day that you're at, attending and speaking to people, and put out your message, as well as consume and see what other people are talking about and learn from an industry. Because part of being at a conference is you meet lots of people to tell your story. The other part is you get to learn a lot from other people. And I think LinkedIn, for a B2B perspective, represents that on a daily basis. So it's just a missed opportunity if you're not engaging, and it just starts with taking one step at a time.
Amazing. Thank you, Neil.
So we started organically already talking about this, but one of the things, being in the research space, that I spend a lot of time thinking about is definitions. And we don't really have a standard definition of what makes a B2B influencer. And I think, at least in my work, I think about it as a subject matter expert or a thought leader. I think one of the challenges that a lot of companies are facing right now as they're moving into B2B influencer marketing is that it does kind of feel like everybody thinks they're a thought leader these days. And there are a lot of hacks out there. And being able to identify who are real, authoritative, credible thought leaders and influencers to partner with, I still think is a roadblock that a lot of brands, companies will have to overcome.
Yeah, thank you for the segue, because actually the next question was going to be around what are some of the unique challenges that B2B companies face that are moving into the influencer marketing space. Again, perhaps not as much with B2C. Again, you have the halo of celebrity. With B2B influence, you really need the halo of credibility. So against that backdrop, we'd love to talk about some of the other challenges that are unique to the B2B influencer marketing space.
I think for me, it's the sell-in. And I think people need to embrace this more, and it's not an easy sell, and we completely, understand that. So really spend your time doing the research. I can't stress this enough. Obviously, B2B influencers are magical when they work really well. There's such a big opportunity there, but for that opportunity to work, I'd say do your research. Find out who you're partnering with. Do your research to find out, what their background is, what their history is. What you don't want is a tweet from 2007 coming back to haunt you. So do your research and make sure you get that right, and then it becomes a lot easier as a process.
Amazing. Jasmine, did you have anything to add from the, you already flagged one, so.
Yeah, I would agree with that to a certain extent. I also think that because it is relatively new, even though I know you'll argue against that, the ecosystem isn't quite set up yet in the same way that it is for B2C. I think it's starting to expand now, and there are more tools and lessons and learnings that B2B brands can take to work within influencer marketing. But I think we're still pretty much in the early days of influencer marketing in B2B in this iteration.
It's always nice when you sit with people long enough and get to know them. I know where you're going to go with this, Neil. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, brands in a B2B space as well have used ambassadors for the longest time to write thought leadership, to talk on stages, to go on. There's nothing new here. It's the format which presents a frequency and scale that is higher. And I think the risk of not getting involved is bigger than the risk of getting involved. I always love the phrase, it's either one day or day one. Day one's a lot closer to achieving something. And yes, if you're going to work with a really big creator and you're going to have a long-term relationship with them, you need to vet the hell out of that to make sure that there's not something that's wrong there. But don't let it get in the way of working with lots of other smaller creators and taking steps forward and learning from them. And I think at the end of the day, these individuals are also representative of the consumer that brands are trying to reach. Even still in the B2B, it's the same process. And so what they learn back through learning from them, I've given you this brief, let's see how you respond and how you would talk as a consumer belonging to this segment that I want to reach. How they then respond and talk about that is a learning for the brand of how to speak to that consumer group across all sorts of different consumer groups. And there's a massive missed opportunity which maybe we'll see in the B2B space because it has been behind. What happened in the consumer space is people just use these creators as loudspeakers. Can you just tell my message like this? And they didn't see that actually it was a great learning and insight generation and a focus group and an access to culture and communities and consumers' insights. And I think if B2B can embrace that and bring them in, you know, when a creator is going to exist, doesn't have to be on the boards of companies. When are they going to exist on, what do they call them, like councils? When are they going to advise on what's going on in culture and product ranges and stuff like that and be heard more as these groups of thoughtful media owners that can talk on these topics? So I'm just like, just go for it. But I'm the entrepreneur that also has a greater tolerance for risk. But, you know, in fairness, when something is no longer risky, the opportunity in that category is diminished because everyone's playing in it. So, you know, new ground's always led and the highest delta of opportunity is there. And I don't think it's that risky anyway. So it's still early days to pour into it.
But adjacent to risk is return on investment. And so another piece of data that we've seen in some of our recent research is that about 61% of marketers that are in the influencer marketing space within B2B are planning to increase their spend. And so against increased economic pressure, demands for measurement and ROI, really curious your collective perspective on, you know, how do you measure success here? Because I think the idea of it being a funnel for intelligence and prompting new ideas coming back into the organization and into the brand is incredibly powerful. But from a B2B perspective, there's always more pressure, especially small business, on the bottom line. So really curious about the measurement aspect of this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll kick off. So I think, listen, influencer marketing is very effective. There's enough measurement in the space to know that it, to like tell us that it works. There's econometrics, there's MMM. You can do a whole bunch of measurement to make sure that it is effective. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think a lot of brands go in petrified that it's not going to do that's not going to return an ROI. I've never done a campaign where it hasn't delivered an ROI for me in a very long time. So for me, measurement's important, but it's not the be all and end all. Take that risk because you'd be surprised. There's a whole bunch of suites that actually help you get there anyways.
So one question would be, how do you then convince other aspects of sort of the B2B buying group, et cetera, to kind of lean in on taking the risk? So I understand the measurement and the ROI piece, but what's the convincing or the case making that helps to get them over?
Take away the word risk.
Take it away.
Call it opportunity.
Why? I mean, to be fair, and like we've all said it, but like, why are we using the word risk? What is risky here in this space? You're working with thought-leading consumers that represent the audience group you're trying to reach, that can help tell your story as a brand. Like, really, what and where is the risk? If like, and again, for small businesses, if I speak to small business or even like medium and growing size businesses, and of course, this is with a bias of being in the space, I don't think a single one of them would say, oh, it's really risky working with creators. Like, it's this mindset that ends up in larger establishments that, you know, it's for some reason, which it shouldn't be a bigger deal to move into something new, and it gains from testing and learning and iterating and trying. You know, I was always fascinated I got the opportunity to go to, this is a real pivot, but I got the opportunity to go to SpaceX. And there what they talk about is they focus on rate of learning. So it's how quickly can I get learnings that let me iterate something forward to adapt and get there, because if you wait too long to try and analyze something and then start, first of all, you could have missed the opportunity, or second of all, you'll get the learnings then that you should have got from taking actions to find that right place. So I just sort of like take the word risk out of the equation and then go, this is nothing new.
Yes.
Principles remain, practices change. The format where this is taking place is new, but it's the same principles that have been there for a long time. We can have a nice debate. We can have a nice debate on it. It's the same principles that have been there for a long, long time, and the practices, the platforms are new. Yeah. Apply those principles to that platform, jump in and go for it.
Because we always say, own, like, it's not risk, it's an opportunity, right? And if you don't own this conversation, somebody else will. All your competitors are doing this anyway. So if you don't jump in, somebody else is going to own that conversation. And you know what? You don't want that at the end of the day.
Fair. Jasmine, I sense there was like heated debate earlier, so we'd love to get your perspective.
Not heated debate earlier, but we might have a heated debate now.
Great.
I think there's a lot of learnings that B2B can actually take from B2C. And I think it has been long this mindset that influencer marketing, creator marketing is risky, even in B2C. And that mindset has started to shift, right? The perception is now different than it was even just a few years ago. So I think it's understandable that a lot of B2B brands could view influencer marketing as being risky, and I do think there is some risk involved in it. Going back to the fact that I think that there are way too many people out there who think they're thought leaders or who think they're experts and really aren't. Without proper research and ways to identify those influencers, it's scary to a lot of brands and can be risky to partner with somebody who may not be good for your brand. You started to talk about this idea of entertainment and education. We also call it edutainment. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I think is really important in the B2B space, but they're actually educating sometimes on really important topics, and they have to make sure that the information that these creators are providing is accurate, or that can reflect negatively on the brand. With LinkedIn specifically though, and on the topic of risk, one thing that I also spend a lot of time thinking about is that it's probably one of the least risky platforms to be doing this.
Seconded.
And for me, a lot of it has to do with self-policing, right? You know that your boss is on the platform. You may not want to say the same kind of things you might be saying somewhere else. And I've seen this over and over again, and I think that, is one of the reasons too that it's such a crucial part of B2B strategies, particularly with influencer marketing as well. What are you going to say?
Neil's ready.
No, look, the point you're making is fair and correct. However, it's easy to vet people. Like, it's never been easier to vet people, actually.
That is true.
And so it's a table stakes thing to vet these people. Like, you can search all of this online stuff and do all of this vetting. We have a tool called Orca, which does all of this, looks through police records and Google search.
But you'd be surprised how many brands aren't doing it.
No, but that doesn't make it risky. It's just do the table stakes thing to operate in this space.
That I will agree with.
And then the volume of voices, I do agree. And it's interesting because I'm in a lot of entrepreneur groups and always I post a lot on LinkedIn, as I say, I'm there all the time, but I'm not trying to be a LinkedIn celebrity or an influencer. It's the least thing to my personality. Have lots of friends that are entrepreneurs that are doing that, and the amount of opportunities it's bringing them is incredible, though, and connecting with these communities, because to your point, it doesn't matter how many people necessarily. And so you've got to sort through the noise. I always go back to this thing. I remember seeing an interview on TV between some cerebral experts from different fields talking about the internet and saying, the internet's not going to work. You don't need more than 100 websites to have enough information out there to get. And yet I've never heard anyone say the phrase, man, there's too many websites on the internet. This space has become a mess. The cream rises to crop and you find your communities. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to end up in smaller niche communities. Societally, we can have another debate about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
But we're going to end up in smaller niche communities with smaller, potentially then tighter, more engaged audiences that find the topics and the people that are interested to them. Where you then go with that is how are brands going to reach people if they exist a lot of their time in these smaller niche communities? It is going to be harder to reach them if you don't embrace the people that are effectively the leaders of these smaller niche communities.
But I don't think there's risk in embracing the smaller communities. But I do think it is important to do that research and homework, because there's plenty of examples in the B2C space where things have gone really wrong. Bud Light, right? Is a great example of a brand where they lost real market value because of, influencers. So it's very important to make sure that you actually do that homework, because you would be surprised. And you know what? The more CMOs we talk to, that is a big risk for them. They talk about it all the time.
Agreed, but it's how many examples are there where it's gone wrong versus it's gone right a lot of the time? It's
but the one time it goes wrong, exactly. It could go wrong, and that could go wrong for you.
But
right?
That was a huge collaboration with a creator that they put a big deal behind and put a big ambassadorship there. And it's again, table stakes. If you're not doing the table stakes vetting, yes, which again is easy to do,
of course,
don't even be in marketing. Get out of space. It's table stakes vetting. And
that I agree with.
If this was literally, we're having a conversation here of how are you going to vet creators? How are we going to work stuff out so it's too risky to work in? But it's just, again, it might be a stage of where some of the industry is at in places.
Well, I don't
but when
think
we're talking about
anyone's saying
table
that it's
stakes
too risky
vetting,
to work in. I think we all see it as an opportunity. I think the idea is that there is more, at least more of a perception of risk, and I think that there is some truth to that.
we all love each other. By
Yeah.
the
No,
way.
I feel the love.
You said we were in your living room having a family debate.
Heated debate is a love language. So we are almost at time. So we are going to do just a quick rapid round. I think such a rich discussion. So first, thank you. Before we close, if you had to give a company that was looking to enter into a brand, into the B2B influencer marketing space, what is the one piece of advice? And we've had a lot of advice here, but what's the one piece of advice that you would call out for them?
I would say start with your employees. Low risk, obviously, but also you'd be surprised how valuable they are in that whole supply chain of creator economy. They know your brand better than anybody else. They're passionate about your brand. And you'd be surprised how much it will do for your whole organization to put somebody in front of the camera.
I would go with people are people, and to keep that in mind, I think it sums up a lot of what we've been talking about here. The way that we are behaving online is shifting, and B2B brands need to keep up with the way that consumers are communicating with each other, communicating with companies. And to add to that, I think one really important channel for B2B going forward that we haven't really talked about is video. I think that's going to be crucial, table stakes for B2B marketers going forward.
Thanks so much, Neil. Take us home.
Take us home. So I'll be the one to mention AI, shall I?
Okay, go for it.
Let's
Must
bring
be
that
fun.
one into the
Neil,
mix
30
of it.
minutes we went without talking about AI.
We did.
And you brought it back in.
I just wanted to make sure whoever put the bet down lost the bet.
We have 3. No, I'm just kidding.
So yeah, look, I think there are two things that are important. First of all, the risk of everyone getting involved and becoming a creator is we have lots of crap content and noise and rubbish out there, because which I agree with, making employees creators and telling their story as well, they have a day job to do and people are busy, and lots of people that are doing these stories have teams around them, and so it's how do you help your employees therefore make interesting content, make great content, because don't put crap content out there, it might as well not be there, there's no point. AI is that tool set that can help, using ChatGPT to go and help take bullet points and turn it into prose and come up with ideas. It's also then that way of onboarding your employees into getting familiar with that tool set. There's all these promises, which are right so, because it probably is going to redefine what we do in generations. But actually the basics of AI tool sets that are there that are a co-pilot that can save you so much time. Yeah. And so I would encourage employees to get more involved with telling the story of their journey as someone that works in a company in the field they're in, plus as an employee of that company, and get them to give them the AI tools to help them write posts and research. And you can train them up, with these frameworks to go with, and then you get your company familiar with those tool sets as well.
Amazing. This was such an incredible and rich conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rahul, Jasmine, and Neil, and for sharing your perspectives. So really appreciate you.